Better Together, Ball State University and Muncie. A series of community forums hosted by the Star Press and Ball State University. From Southside Middle School, the theme of the first of 3 community forums will be neighborhoods and education.
Good evening. I'm Greg Fallon. I'm the executive editor of the Star Press. Welcome to the first of 3 Better Together public forums. Thank you for joining us, whether you're here at Southside Middle School this evening or joining us via broadcast. Tonight we will discuss neighborhoods and education and how Ball State and Muncie can work together to address the issues. I would like to thank Ball State President Jeff Mearns for joining us tonight and listening to the community as we start a new chapter of Ball State's partnership with Muncie. It is important, too, for us to take just a moment to appreciate President Mearns and his wife, Jennifer, who have made a personal commitment to Muncie already. You might recall last Friday's announcement that President and Mrs. Mearns established the Mearns Proud Family Scholarship, and gave $100,000 to the fund. This new scholarship will benefit Muncie Central students who will be the first in their families to go to college. Let's show President and Mrs. Mearns our gratitude. And that effort continues to grow. In addition to their contribution, Ball State's Board of Trustees has committed $150,000 from the savings of not having an extravagant installation. The Ball State University Foundation Board of Directors and the Ball State University Board of Trustees will personally contribute more than $30,000 more to that scholarship. It is with that wonderful news and new opportunity for seniors at Muncie Central that we move into the reason we are here tonight, and that is for discussion. And that is the purpose, a discussion. Them and you, and a discussion, everybody. But first, I want to introduce who's joining us. You already know who President Mearns is, or if you don't, here he is.
Thank you, Greg.
Joining us also on the board, and it was important to President Mearns that we have a mix of not only representatives from Ball State, but also from our community, so some of these folks might look familiar. Julius Anderson, member of the Muncie City Council. Eva Zygmunt, the Helen Gant Elmore Distinguished Professor of Elementary Education at Ball State. Walisha Scaife, Director of Family Engagement for Muncie P3. Ken Hudson, Executive Director of the Whiteley Community Council. And Heather Williams, Building Better Neighborhoods Program Manager in Ball State's Office of Community Engagement. Now, as a courtesy to everyone, I hope we can all silence our cell phones, and I'd like to take the opportunity to go over a few ground rules. The Star Press is only here to serve as an impartial moderator. We are here tonight to be supportive of both the university and the community. We are here to facilitate conversation. All questions are welcomed and must be submitted in writing. Index cards were provided. If you didn't grab one, Phil Beebe is going to be collecting those cards, and we can certainly bring you one if you need one. Just raise your hand. But he'll be walking up and down the aisles and collect those questions as you write those out. And I would encourage you to go ahead and start doing that. We welcome everyone to participate. We want to hear from as many people as possible. My role as MC tonight is pretty simple. Just make sure that one person dominates the conversation and to keep us on track topically. Again, tonight's focus is on education and neighborhoods. Our other public forums will have other topics of conversation, and we'll discuss those in a bit. We are here to respectfully address issues, not attack individuals. And these forums are just one of many ways that President Mearns is listening and gathering information in our community in his first few months here in Muncie. After the public forums, President Mearns will summarize what he's learned and determine the best course moving forward. So let's get started, and I want to ask President Mearns a question first. If you could just sort of discuss with us your decision, and your wife, of course, to start the scholarship fund and your thinking in doing that.
Well, thank you, Greg. And first of all, I want to thank you and the Star Press for helping us organize these forums. Absolutely. And helping to participate in it. We're very grateful for you.
Thank you
for that service. So I'll tell you the short version because last Friday I was able to tell a little bit of the longer version. And the simple version is that Jennifer and I, and Jennifer is here with me this evening, we were inspired by the lessons that we learned from our parents. My father was the first in our family on either side to get a college education, and it changed his life. It changed the trajectory of our whole family. And so it was, and then he committed his life to education, and not just education as a college professor, but I talked a little bit about Friday about his commitment, his belief that every child had a fundamental right to a quality education. And my mother, who was like you, Julius, she was on the PTA, then she was on the city council and served as a mayor. She was obsessed with not just building buildings, those are important, but building communities and building senior centers and playgrounds and playrooms for toddlers. So it was in their memory and inspired by their memory that Jennifer and I decided, as part of the newest members of the Muncie community, that we wanted to do something personally to foster quality education for every child here in Muncie. And so we took that on, not with the idea that others would follow, but we've been so gratified that others did. And Greg, I want to thank you and the Star Press. You announced in the paper over the weekend that the Star Press is going to make a contribution to that fund, and we're very grateful for that. And then learned just early yesterday, Tom and Sheila Bracken are here. Tom sent me a note yesterday to let me know that the board of the George and Frances Ball Foundation has decided to contribute an additional $150,000 to that fund. So working together in less than a week, we've generated nearly $450,000 to provide affordable, quality college education for the children right here in Muncie. And Jennifer and I are so proud and grateful to be a part of it.
That's great. That's great. And certainly not missed on anybody is the opportunity to give that sort of education to our own seniors who are growing up. This is home. Hopefully we can keep them here, and there's a long-term effect there, certainly. Go ahead and get your questions out on cards. Again, this is your opportunity to ask President Mearns questions, but also our panelists here. In fact, he's so eager to hear what you have to say. He's provided me with some questions that he wants me to ask you. And hopefully towards the end of our hour-long program here, I'll be able to step down on the floor and I'll ask some of you to come forward and provide us with some answers that the university is wanting to hear from the community. I'll go ahead and try to start our conversation here. And this is for our panelists. If you could just sort of give your thoughts and your observations about the connection that may already exist between Ball State and our community as it pertains to education and, for that matter, neighborhoods. Of course, Ball State is known as a teacher's college, right? And so education, not only because it's a higher education institution, education is at the core and always has been of what Ball State is. Talk about some of the relationships that we already have in place between the university and our community, and that goes for any of our panelists.
Can I go first?
Absolutely.
Okay. Again, I would like to thank President Mearns for this opportunity, along with you, Greg, with Star Press. It's already in motion. I kind of shared with some of my colleagues as it relates to the former president, Madam Joanne Gore. She kind of got this ball rolling with this by building that bridge between Ball State University and our Whiteley Neighborhood Association. And I remember her coming to the Bewley Center and standing right there on the platform, says, whatever it's going to take, we're going to make this thing happen. And basically, we've been flowing ever since. But I was so excited, and I've been speaking there with our mayor because he thinks that we have a real winner here as a president. He really believes in this guy, and he says that, hey, look, he put skin in the game, he's ready, and I really appreciate that. But when President Gore came and made that stand, things began to start happening. Our students began to come into the neighborhood and began to start doing, well, I got this written down here, as it relates to let's see, what is that? Yeah, school within a context in the community. And in fact, a couple of my students are here tonight mentoring. But with that being, bringing that to the community, that lets us know that, hey, look, they're making an investment in the community. And Ball State, I mean, what more can you ask? It's right in our backyard. It's a teacher's institution. Boy, the Muncie Community School could use that. What great partnership it would be. So with the city of Muncie, along with the, I don't want to miss out on IU Health, because they are part of this as well. Sure. along with Ball State and the city, coming together, focusing on the Muncie Community School, which I was a part of, at least on the board for 8 years, is really going to make a difference in our community. So I'm really happy about that, Greg.
Great, great. Any other thoughts? Go ahead.
I would say that I work with about 100 students every year that positively impact approximately 4,500 Muncie residents. And those are through immersive learning projects, service learning. We have students all across the university, not just ones that I work with, but thousands and thousands of students that are out in the community in full-on immersive learning classes, through voluntary services, just really out in the neighborhoods, getting to know residents and understanding what connections that they can make. What is the need and what can those students do to fulfill that need? And we're building new relationships every day. We have Ball State Athletics for the first time is really stepping up and bringing their athletes out to the neighborhood cleanups, which is a really exciting thing. I mean, you've got all of these, kids that have so much energy, and you have neighborhoods that really have a need, that you've got hundreds of tires in South Central that need picked up. So you bring those students out there, an hour later, they're gone. So this is the first time that we'll have a couple dozen Ball State football players, baseball players, volleyball players participating in our neighborhood cleanups this fall. So I'm really excited about that.
That's great. That's great. I'm going to go ahead and kick right into the cards here. And I think this is fairly widely known around town, but Longfellow Elementary has really developed a fantastic partnership with Ball State. And the card reads, Longfellow Elementary has developed great partnerships with Ball State education programs, thus adding not only more adults to the building, but also innovative ideas for classes and schools. And here's the interesting question. How can we expand that to reach all MCS schools so that all students can benefit? Eva, maybe you could talk a little bit about what's going on at Longfellow, and what does the future hold for those sorts of programs as it pertains to other schools, other buildings within the corporation?
Absolutely, thank you. So the program that Julie has started talking about is called the Schools Within the Context of Community program, and that was begun in 2009 as a true university school community collaboration with a mutually agreed upon vision for academic success for all children. And so we devised this program knowing that, being a good teacher is much more than writing a good lesson plan. To be a good teacher, you really need to understand who your kids are and understand the context of their community and the context of their lives and develop relationships with people in the community. So that's what we set out to do in 2009. We get our candidates off campus. Many of them are here tonight. Off campus for the whole semester. Their classes happen out of the Bewley Center. They're practice teaching at Longfellow and Huffer Memorial Children's Center. And when they're not doing all of those things, they're matched with mentor families in the neighborhood who invite them to church and invite them to family gatherings and invite them to attend community council meetings together so that they can understand the context of children's lives and make their teaching more relevant and more engaging and more culturally responsive. We have been very intentional about listening to the voices of the community and what the community wants. So for example, in 2010, we had an event at the Bewley Center and listened to families who told us kids need things to do after school, they need things to do on the weekend, they need things to do in the summer that will help keep them on track to be successful educationally. And because we had that community voice, we were able to apply to the Indiana Department of Education and leverage nearly $1 million to do after-school, Saturday school, and summer programs for neighborhood children with the goal of grade level literacy for all the children, which has been a very successful program that's now been renewed. So to answer your question, we are working to expand that. Our department has a committee on community engaged teacher preparation. We have been doing some work over at Southview that we will be building upon. The university has committed a professional development school liaison to each of the elementary schools in Muncie, and we now have practicum students at all of the 6 elementary schools in Muncie. So we are working to replicate that model, which now has been nationally recognized as a new way of preparing teachers, and we're fully committed to doing that in our department.
Okay, great. I tell you what, some of these questions are fantastic. If I need an investigative journalist, I know where to go. So I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, but we'll see. So studies show school libraries staffed with media specialists who are able to engage in collaborative teaching with teachers as partners drive up test scores? What types of things can BSU do to help support the schools who have libraries in Muncie Community Schools, who maybe don't have the technology at their fingertips? In what ways can Ball State play a role in that way? And that's open-ended for anybody who might have ideas. No? Okay. All right. It's okay.
Eva, you probably have a thought on that.
Now, we're only going to let him do that one time, right?
Can you repeat the gist
Yeah,
of
just
the question? Because I do have an idea.
In terms of technology.
Yes.
That's something that obviously most schools struggle to find the funding for, struggle to put the sort of technology in front of every student that they might want to or need to.
Absolutely.
Are there ways that the university can play a role in trying to broaden those opportunities for local students?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, part of our program, we are working with someone who's from the Department of Educational Studies and is a specialist in educational technology. So he is already working with our candidates to more effectively integrate technology into education. But he is also working, Dr. John Clausen is his name, and he's also working with students who are at Central right now on the integration of technology into the schools and helping to facilitate professional development opportunities for teachers around those issues as well. So we have those resources at the university, and I believe that there are projects in place that are beginning to address some of those needs upon which we will be able to build in the future.
Okay. President Mearns, maybe you are best suited to answer this. Beyond the scholarship, obviously, anything else in the works right now in terms of trying to partner with MCS that you maybe can share with us? This person is wanting to know if there's anything that might help with the financial issues and or enrollment issues at Ball State. I know you've had some initial conversations, but is there anything there that you can share with us?
Yeah, at this point, I've only had some preliminary conversations with the administrator and not yet with the superintendent, although I'm scheduled to meet with the superintendent next week. So
Okay.
At this point, those conversations continue, and we want to be good partners, and we're looking for ways to support the schools. But I think as we're talking about this evening, our view of education is truly across the whole talent development spectrum. That's certainly an important component of it, but that's not our exclusive focus at this point.
Okay, I'm going to read a couple of these cards here. These are questions that we hope to hear you answer at some point tonight. So I just want to kind of throw them out there, get you thinking, so that way when we get to that part, you maybe have some answers. In what ways can Ball State better engage with the community? What obstacles keep you from attending campus events? What attracts you to Ball State athletic and or arts and culture events? I'll read a few more in a couple of minutes. Ball State, back to the cards submitted, Ball State has sponsored charter schools in the past and is currently sponsoring at least one in Muncie. Do you anticipate an expansion of BSU charter school programs in the near future? That's a pretty specific question for you as well.
Right. Well, so our dean is there, sitting here in the third row, and I wish he had a microphone.
I'll move if you want him to come up.
Roy, do you want to help me out with that? Again, I believe that our responsibility is not to actually create charter schools, but actually to serve as an agency to assess the quality and of charter schools all across the state. Roy, did I get that correct? All right.
Why don't we talk about neighborhoods a little bit more? Ken, you're here from the Whiteley Community Council. Not to back totally away from education, we'll certainly get back to it. Can you talk a little bit about how involved the Whiteley Community Council has gotten and some of the great things that are going on in your area of the community that perhaps people just are not aware of because maybe they don't make it to that, that side of town, and just really an amazing model probably for some folks to consider things. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on?
Yes. Thanks for the opportunity to be
Sure.
here. Thank you for calling me out. That's the next question.
Well, I want to talk about neighborhoods.
I'm
I
just
want to talk
kidding.
about
I'm
neighborhoods.
just kidding. So the Wiley community has been fortunate enough to have some exemplary citizens inside that took it upon themselves to go into their community and make a difference. So what you have is a group of ordinary citizens who said, I want to change what I see. And that's really where it starts. And it just depends on what you see. It depends on how you're going to organize and what you're going to change. So the Wiley Community Council organized themselves with the help of Ball State some years back. And out of that organization and a partnership, they developed a strategic plan that had some specific goals. And part of the goals were beautification, safety, infrastructure, entrepreneurship and business, and then there were some others that came out of that, like marketing and pride, event planning, and fundraising. So now within that, what we've done is we have taken that advice and we organized ourselves around it and then started breaking it up into smaller pieces to see how those goals can be achieved. So the very first thing that was done was organization. So the Whiteley community set up co-chairs for those 7 committees. And through those co-chairs and then volunteers out of the community, they started to address the different needs of the community that came out of that strategic plan. Part of the success with the Whiteley community has been holding each other's hands. To be honest with you, there's no secret sauce. We had to come together and say, we have to do it together. And then someone had to say, well, if it's not me, then who? So the success came through partnering with other people, partnering with Ball State, the churches in Whiteley, partnered with churches outside of Whiteley. Co-chairs are people in Whiteley and people outside of Whiteley, because there had to be multiple perspectives on the situation. And through relationship building, which in turn allows us to see the other person's perspective, we began to address the needs slowly and in some ways effectively. You stumble along the way, but if you don't quit, eventually you hit the target. And so the Whiteley Community Council has established a food pantry over in that area. It hasn't met its 1-year point yet. We've partnered with Ball State to do free Zumba in the area, which it's not just exercise, which is great. The program is geared to change the culture of the community that it sits in, because there's exercise, and then with the exercise, there's nutritional training and classes, and there's also biometrics testing. And eventually, the people who are being tested with their weight, their blood pressure, things like that, they'll be taught to do those things themselves. So, and childcare was added to that program so that the culture of the family can be changed. And so the mother or the father is not just taking Zumba, the child is exercising also, and now they're being taught how to prepare healthy food, and they're being explained to what that means to their body. They're being taught how to take their own blood pressure, measure their own waist, measure their own wrist, and all of a sudden you see a change in the culture that usually goes along with a lower class neighborhood.
Okay, great, thank you. This is an interesting question, and so I'll put it out here because it's something I think that we hear a lot and probably a fair amount of truth to it. As a lifelong South Muncie resident, what can we do to help get the South Side more attention from BSU? Are there any committees that would benefit from having a representative from the South Side of town? So it's an interesting, and maybe President Mearns, did you think about that? Julius, maybe you could talk a little bit about, you were even mentioning that you went to Southside, and so maybe you could share a little bit of your thoughts on that relationship and maybe a couple of specific areas where you think there could be some good growth.
Okay. Well, one of the things we've done early on, we was able to get the Walmart South out here, and that kind of shined some light on it. But the south end of Muncie have always felt like they've been neglected. I have heard that over and over again. But if you notice that this administration, over where the old Kmart was at over there, did this roundabout. As we come straight down south, headed north, you can see where we have brought more life and have stimulated that whole area about Dairy Queen all the way down to the underpath. The city has not neglected it, and in fact, it's putting a lot of money and bringing a lot more to this area over here, because we want this site, and Burger King has came up, and I'm just saying this because those are the things that you can see visually. Sure. as we continue to move from the south to north. But I still think that we really need to do something big out here in this area. Even though those buildings over there used to be the old Kmart is occupied now. I know Padgett's Small Engine Warehouse has gotten some of it, but we need to do a little bit more from that perspective.
Do you have any thoughts on?
Well, this is, again, I've moved around a little bit in my professional and personal life, and it's interesting how communities tend to be divided by regions. So I spent a lot of time in Cleveland, Ohio, and anyone who knows Cleveland is divided between the east side and the west side, divided by the Cuyahoga River. Most recently, Jennifer and I came from northern Kentucky, and that community, that region of 2.3 million people, see themselves not only as divided between who's on the north side of the Ohio River and who's on the south side of the Ohio River, but one of the remarkable things I discovered is there's the Licking River in northern Kentucky, and it divides who's on which side of the Licking River. So one of the things I've learned from that is to overcome those natural barriers and those human barriers, you need to be persistent. You need to be proactive. And I can tell you that Jennifer and I, we had a wonderful day last Thursday, and one of the places that we stopped was at Southview. And I told these folks the story, so if I may, I'll tell it again.
Sure.
So we were in there to actually listen to some third graders read. And the one young boy who I was reading, who was reading to me, was just remarkable how capable he was. I've raised 5 children, and I know what third graders are supposed to read like, and how this young man was reading. And when it was done, I reached out to shake his hand, and he said, "Can I give you a hug?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Because I'm a hugger." And after composing myself after that, I gave him a hug. But I can assure you that based on the experience that Jennifer and I had in Southview last Thursday, that we'll be back both in our professional and personal capacities.
Great.
Can I add just one thing
Please.
really quickly? The Muncie Action Plan will be working this fall and winter through spring to help develop neighborhood associations, micro neighborhoods within Southside. So we're really, really interested in finding people who want to help us through that process. So if you live in the South Side, if you have family in the South Side and you think they'd be a great leader, have them contact me.
Okay, great. So this is a touchy topic, but I think it's on a lot of people's minds, and it has to do some with neighborhood and schools as well. Given that there are a large percentage of the Muncie community is owned by not-for-profits and then are tax exempt, Ball State obviously, Ball Memorial Hospital, churches, etc. The loss of property taxes that funds our Muncie community schools, is BSU prepared to address the tax base erosion? This is obviously something that a lot of communities deal with. Just from a sort of overview standpoint, what are your thoughts on that, and what sorts of solutions can there be?
Well, I don't know what the solutions are, and that's
Sure.
part of being new here and listening. I understand the problem. I think it's also, though, important to know the flip side of that same equation, which is the economic impact of having large institutions here like the hospital. So while on the one hand we're not subject to property taxes, the amount of money that our faculty, staff, and students spend and invest in the community, as well as the hospital, has a significant positive economic impact. And so I say that not to say we're not going to do anything more, but rather to understand that that equation is balanced. What we will specifically do, I've had some conversations with Dr. Bird about perhaps what we can do together to help foster population growth in certain critical neighborhoods in Muncie. So all I would say is those conversations have begun, and stay tuned.
Okay. This maybe ties into a little bit of population growth, and I'm going to kind of mold this question a little bit. Universities are inherently transient. Students and even professors and administrators come and go. How do you think the community can really encourage students to be active and invested in the community? So an interesting question perhaps for our panelists, rather than us depending on Ball State, what can our community do to better engage the students and the employees at Ball State with hopes of potentially retaining them after graduation or getting them to move here if they're not already? I'm interested in any of your thoughts. And I don't think Walisha has spoken yet, so.
Everybody said everything I was thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I don't, I'm sure there are lots of things, and I'm honored also to be here with Dr. Mearns and to have this opportunity to hear. And that's, I think, most important. As a matter of fact, in one of your initial questions about our relationship, Ball State's relationship with the community's relationship with Ball State, I was going to say, but we moved on, that, and I think this will touch on that question a little bit, the way that the SCC program that you heard Dr. Eva talk about, the way that that program became a part of the Whiteley community is that the instructors, the professors who were leading that, they came, because it's all about motive, method, message. And so the method was, we want to hear, we want to listen and learn. The motive was, we want to listen and learn. There was not something else behind the scenes. They truly came in and said, what does your community need? What are your dreams in your community? And how can we come alongside and help you make your dreams come true? So I say that because what's happened over the 9 years with SCC students, obviously many have gone on and graduated, and they have been vested in our community. Some of them joined churches in our community. Some of them found their husband or their wife in our community. Some of them, and so they continue to even if they move, they continue to be concerned about, be in touch with their mentors, make financial investments into the community. And so I say that because, again, we're here to talk about how do we make this happen both ways. And so, yes, hopefully we'll talk about the kinds of things that help the residents of Muncie feel really welcomed on campus, like or not so, like the parking is really challenging on campus. So what can we do on campus to help residents of Muncie feel welcomed and come to the athletic events and the cultural events, the art events, but then, of course, then what do we do? So Dr. Eva always talks about how any university in a city should be making a significant impact. I really think the relationship has to initiate with the university. I really do. But again, when the residents begin to see, oh, they're not dropping a project on us and leaving. Come for a semester, drop a project we never see or hear from a particular department or professor or students anymore. When we see that the university is willing to have this long-lasting, maybe we'll continue this kind of relationship. I think that's what is making, I'm seeing it now with my own friends, my own peers. People want to go to campus. They want to know more. They want to be involved and engaged, where before, we did not feel like we were welcome because we didn't think that people wanted to be in our space. So I think it's these authentic connections and relationships when we say, we don't want to drop something. We want to know how we partner with you that begins to make that happen. So just a little bit on that.
And a little opinion on my own, a willingness to share experiences,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
It's all about being able and willing to talk, and if you have a great experience if you're a Ball State person and you have a great experience with someone who is a Muncie person, talking to fellow Ball State people about their real people, and vice versa, right? And really discussing that. Julius, you had something?
Yeah, I was going to kind of piggyback on that. For years I've heard that, for young people, there's no social life here. If you want to have a relationship, you got to drive to Indianapolis, Carmel someplace. But I just want to say that if you have driven downtown Muncie on a Friday, Saturday night, we got Vermeers and all that. Muncie the downtown area is really coming to life. And what I mean by that, you see a lot of young people socializing, having fun, and it's really being built up. So I think with the renovation downtown and with the new hotel and all of the new areas that's opening up down there, I'm for sure once this whole thing is done and we build out, I believe that we're going to have young people, professional people staying. They're looking for lodging, they're looking for places they can socialize, and this is going to be the hub.
Right.
I was just going to say, just to piggyback on what Willis just said, I think the opportunities for candidates to authentically engage, our students to authentically engage in the community and build relationships with organizations and with individuals and with families. I promise you many of our candidates move on to other places throughout the country to do their teaching, but more than we would have expected have stayed because of those connections and because of those relationships. So again, it's a two-way, but when those relationships are in place, authentic opportunities for those relationships, then my investment is much more significant than it would otherwise be, and we've seen that work.
Sure.
So just 3 points to amplify that. First of all, one of the reasons that Jennifer and I wanted to do the scholarship for Muncie students to come to Ball State was because we wanted to use that to prevent the departure of talent, right? Let's keep the people who grew up in Muncie, let's educate them, give them a college degree in Muncie with the hope that they'll stay here. The second is I've had some conversations with Judd Fisher and the Ball Brothers Foundation and also Dr. Bird. As you know, we've not only have the university, but we at IU has a medical school here. Sure. Why aren't we focusing on creating a pipeline of educating Muncie students who go to high school here, who go to Ball State, who then can go directly into the medical school here in Muncie between Ball State and Memorial, and engage them in their primary care residencies here so that they stay here. And I think some of the creative things that the Ball Brothers Foundation is doing is fostering that. The third thing I would say, our students, not only the ones in your program, want to become engaged in the community. I had an opportunity before classes start to meet with all of the RAs. These are 150 students who are involved in the residence halls, and I asked them, so tell me what we should do more of, what do I need to know? And first of all, after they told me that the best pork tenderloin sandwich is at Berkey's, one of the students said, we need to do more with the community. These were our students who weren't from Muncie, who were coming to Ball State and saying they want to have a relationship, not just a social relationship, but an educational relationship, a meaningful relationship. So one of the things that we can do better is to tap that interest in so many different ways to get those students embedded in the culture and the neighborhood and the future of Muncie, because even those who don't grow up here, maybe they'll stay.
Sure.
Their lives will be significantly impacted through those experiences.
And again, the method now, because it can't just be a testing kind of situation. It has to truly be building authentic relationships.
Sure. Go ahead.
And I mean, all of that is fantastic, and I agree with what everyone said. And one thing that they were touching on kind of underneath it all was in the larger community, sometimes there's a sense of we've been left alone or we've been left out by the business world, by the larger facilities. And that relationship building, businesses and organizations and the college and the hospital and so on and so forth, having programs that go into the community and build lasting relationships, like I believe you mentioned, not dropping a program right in the middle of the neighborhood and walking away and say, well, that class is over, I guess we'll just leave everything there. No, make sure it's followed through. And one thing that's extremely important is that whoever goes into the community have to remember that they're going into the community, they don't live there. If you go into the community, you have to go in with the right heart. And not only that, you have to engage the people in an honest way, and you have to get their buy-in. You can't go in and say, this is what's good for you. You have to go in and say, I'm willing to listen to what you have to say. And then you have to convince them, because trust is always an issue. You have to convince them that you're there for their good and for their well-being, and that you're not going to just turn on and desert them, because for you, this is a heart issue and not a financial issue. Or I'm not going to suck everything out of it that I want and leave you holding the ball later on. So the trust has to be built. As soon as you build trust, you can build a lot of things, but trust is always on the foundation first.
Sure. Okay, great. We're getting into sort of the last half, obviously, of our hour. I want to read these other questions that President Mearns wanted to hear from you, and then I'm going to pose one more question to our panel, and then I'm going to move down, and I would encourage anybody who would like to answer some of the questions that I've posed to file down to this aisle over here, and then I'll have you step forward one at a time, and they want to hear your answers. Okay, so if the university were to create an investment pool for the community, how should it be used? How can Ball State attract more local high school juniors and seniors to Ball State? And what are the 3 most urgent needs in Muncie? And I didn't mean to transition into this question with that question, but it certainly does. A student's home environment is a huge factor in a student's success. Some, perhaps many, MCS students come from unstable or dysfunctional environments. Poverty and addiction are 2 reasons, and there are others. Does Ball State have a role in helping Muncie tackle those problems? And with that, I will move down, and I encourage folks who'd like to answer questions to come forward. Do you, anybody, and I think that that's a multi-level question, right? I mean, it has to do with education. It has to do with our really young ones. It has to do with our neighborhoods. So, I'm interested in what you think, and then, what sort of role does the university play in sort of those social issues?
Well, I guess I'll just answer it at kind of the highest level, and that's why we were very deliberate and intentional in referring to this program as not just education or not just Muncie schools, but neighborhoods and education across that pipeline. And certainly those very significant and profound problems, including poverty and addiction, impede educational development. So I don't see how there is any solution that could produce better educational results without addressing holistically the societal problems that are impeding that progress. Again, don't know what the answers are, but we have to approach it holistically, and that's why, again, I believe the notion of joining neighborhoods in education is so important.
But this is a start to all of that. Dr. Eva talked about, we're training teachers to be. And we're talking about doing it through relationship. We're talking to family, to pre-service teachers about how to build a relationship with kids through the family. And so we are not putting families on the outside of that. We're keeping families centered to that. That's got to impact a family as well as candidates. And so I think that really begins a cycle. I don't even know that we know the power and impact of that, but we know that it will be good. It definitely will be good, because we're not just talking about students, and we're talking about training our pre-service teachers to work with kids. We're talking about, what does it mean? Family is not an add-on. So how do we get into a community? Why is it important to reach out to a community? Why is it important to understand the context of that child's life? That's family and community. And we will get to those matters. We can't conquer them, we can't fix them all, but that's where it starts. That's how we become authentic. And when we're authentic, then families can be honest, and we will appreciate dysfunction, because we all have some level of dysfunction, right? So we will understand that doesn't make a family bad or good, or it just means that we come together and we're better together.
Sure. I think to a certain extent, we marginalize families a lot in education. We push them to the margins while we do our work, right? And we're extraordinarily grateful to the Ball Brothers Foundation, who have invested in our program, as has United Way, to give us resources to work to authentically engage families in their children's education. Privileging that voice is something that we cannot work without. And our experience has been extraordinarily positive with that orientation.
Sure,
And,
great. So I really want to move into the part, if we can, where we hear from folks, because I know how important it is to President Mearns. He wants to hear from you guys. I've already posed, I think, half a dozen questions, and would welcome you to come up. Please identify yourself at a minimum by name. Come on up here and let him have it, and but in a really nice and polite way. But I know he definitely wants to hear your thoughts.
Well, you said answer a question.
Yes.
You asked some questions early on. What can the community do? What can the university do to bring more people on campus? How can we connect to athletics? By the way, I'm Terry Witt-Bailey. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Muncie. Thank you for putting on this program. This is the beginning of a great relationship, which is the theme that I'm hearing. We need to move beyond posters and press releases. We make really great posters here in Muncie, great, exciting things that we put on walls, and we want people to come to our events. We send out press releases, and we expect people to come to our meetings and our activities and our events at Ball State and in the community. What I'm hearing, and you're all saying it, is that there needs to be that relationship between people and the partnerships. So I may see a lovely poster on the wall, but if someone didn't invite me, not me, because I'll go. But
we know.
But there are some people who need someone to invite them.
Sure.
Especially on campus. There are times when the community feels like they're not welcome. So we need to find that individual that can reach out, whether it's an athlete when they pick up the tires and they interact with young people or people in the neighborhoods, or whether we see something in the newspaper and we say, oh, well, that's not for me. It might be a phone call or a text message or an instant message that says, come go with me. And so that relationship of having the partnerships with people, I'm hearing about people, is how we get beyond all the people that are here tonight are the people that would have come anyway. And we have, what, 70,000 people in our community? We needed to reach out to that one person who was doubtful, who said, well, maybe not. It's about Ball State, and they're not going to listen to me. Yes, I know that Ball State will listen. And so that's kind of my point. That's my answer to the first set of questions, relating the people and the partnerships and taking those lovely posters and press releases and even panel discussions and going beyond this proscenium and reaching out and touching the people.
Sure. Thank you so much for your thoughts. And I would just echo on that. Well, why not throw a challenge out on the floor? Terry believes that all of you would have come anyway, right? For the next one, bring someone with you who would not have come, right? And let them be a part of hearing what we're saying and what we're doing. And maybe that will make a difference then. So thank you for that. Come on up. Come on up. Your name?
My name's Steve Robert.
Okay.
Yep. And it's a really good point. Well, I'll need to bring somebody who's not in the choir with us and make the choir bigger that way.
Sure.
Absolutely. Wonderful panel, of course, and a wonderful conversation. President Mearns, I heard two questions coming from you that I thought I could speak to. One is something that keeps people in the community from getting involved at Ball State, I think a lot of times, is real simple parking. You know, you want to go to the art museum. I want to, hey, Mom, let's go to the art museum. She doesn't get around too good, but there's nowhere to park. You know, if you're a student and you're 20 and you don't mind huffing for a half mile to get there, that's one thing. But if you can hardly get from here to there, parking is something. I wonder what it would be like if at a few of your locations you had special parking places that were reserved for community people only. You know, I wonder if that might make people in the community feel a little more welcomed into the Ball State somehow. I've said for a long time that the spiritual life, and I think every aspect of life, is made out of concrete steps. So that's something concrete that could be done. Then when you go into the community, whenever I've been involved with Ball State going into the community, they're always wanting to help with the information. Let's talk about what needs done. Let's get this information and that information and see if we can find an answer and yada yada. But when it comes down to actually accomplishing anything, that's usually, in my experience, humbly, and I'm very happy to have you be here, but that's when Ball State people are walking back away and it's time to actually see something get accomplished. So I would just say to change that culture, if you could encourage people from Ball State who were going to go into the community to take with them a commitment to getting at least some concrete thing accomplished in addition to sorting out the information somehow. That might, then there would be these little concrete things that had happened that people could see and feel a part of. How's that?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Come on up. And just so you know, I warned him that parking would come up. So he's been forewarned, and I'm surprised it took 50 minutes to get to it. But that's okay. Come on, what's your name?
Barbara Maves.
Okay.
And I've been reading a lot of headlines, but some of the headlines that bother me are what I'm reading about our schools. And I think that we need to recognize that many parents of all incomes across this country have realized the value of an education, and they are looking for places where there are good schools. And I think that's apparent in Muncie. And so one of the things that, and I think that instead of economic development bringing schools, I think good schools bring economic development. And we need to turn our thinking around about that. So therefore, we need to encourage all these 1,000 or more students who have left the Muncie schools and are going to schools outside of the place where their home is located in this county because they feel that that's a better school. I don't know if that's true or it's not true, but there are certainly a number of people who feel that way. And if you read the headlines and if you read the stories, it tends to make you feel that way. I have a place in Florida I know of a community, and one of the things that happened there is that a very wealthy donor gave money for every student who graduated from high school to be able to go to 2 years of college. Now, that is a community where a large number of the parents are picking oranges, so we know that there are a lot of students that are low income. But by including everyone who graduated from the school, there are people who live there because 2 years of tuition is a lot of money. And I happen to have a rental, and there was a man who, and his family, and he's from Cincinnati, incidentally, and so he was hired as a principal in a neighboring community, not that community. But he chose to rent, and I asked him, why are you living here? And he said, what do you mean? It used to be Edison College, now it's Florida Southwestern. But he said, I've got 3 kids, and 3 2-year tuition is a lot of money, and this is where I want to live, and I want my kids to go here. Isn't there some way that we can try to start a fund in the foundation or wherever and try to collect money in order for any student who graduates from Central High School in the city of Muncie and has been here at least a couple of years to get 2 years of tuition? Is there any way to do that?
Well, we appreciate your thoughts, and obviously the scholarship fund that President Mearns has already started will certainly play at least a small role in that, if not a large one, if it continues to grow. So, but we appreciate your thoughts on that. Come on up. Just so everybody knows, we have about 10 minutes left in our sort of official broadcast of this. If we keep going and we find that the conversation is fruitful, we'll wrap this up in an official capacity at the hour mark, and then I'm happy to come back down and take a few more responses and thoughts if we think that would be valuable to do. So come on up, and what's your name?
My name is Catherine Mitchell, and I have a student that is at Ball State that's a freshman, and then I have a sophomore that's at IU. And one of the things that I noticed that I wish that we did at Ball State that I think really would bring the students more into the community and might even help the community a little more economically is that at IU they have a lot of agreements with the local businesses in order to be able to have the parents put money onto their little cash card, and they can go out into the community and they can spend it, and that gets them into the community, it gets them into those businesses, and then they actually have a reason to leave campus. Right now you have the little card and you can get, they could do laundry. So that's not really a whole lot. And like my daughter is here in Muncie, I'm here, so I can get her to places, but like her roommates' parents are in Chicago. So if they want to be able to send her cash, it'd be very easy to be able to load it onto a cash card and be able to then, she could go out in the community and get the necessity she needs without having to worry about that. So.
Okay, thank you.
So Bernie Hannon, raise your hand. We talked about
There he
that
is.
about 6 weeks ago, right?
Do you want to expand on that at all?
Well,
or?
I'm just familiar with the concept from other communities, and I've asked Bernie to begin the process of exploring whether that could be feasible for some
that's good.
No promises. Whoa, don't clap yet.
No, it's too late. They clapped. You're locked. You're locked in. They
As
clapped.
Steve said, we only clap when we have actual tangible accomplishments, not when we talk about.
Well, and I'll tell you one thing that when I grumbled to my daughter, I admit it, when we were doing the orientation, I grumbled, well, why can't they, do that here? She said, Mom, stop critiquing it, comparing the two colleges. But she also said, yeah, that would be easier. So I know the students would like it. So I say go for it.
It'll just make it easier for her to spend your money.
That's true. That's true. Come on up, sir. Okay, your name?
Edward McNary. I just heard Councilman Anderson was talking about the division between west, north, and the south side of Muncie. Well, Muncie, as you know, the south side has always been considered as a blue-collar town. But in the last 10 years, I guess, when Ball State, before Dr. Muir came, it was
Gore.
Dr. Gore, yes, yes. And I saw the change taking place, and I think now people are becoming more familiar. One time they just felt that Ball State was an educational setting out there, and they didn't feel it was a little inferior, with them coming. And my son graduated from Ball State, and it was one thing, we were talking one evening, and he said, Dad, he said, I said, you graduated from high school. I said, where are you going to college? He said, well, I think I'm going to Ball State. And he mentioned to me, he said, some of the high schools here, the counselor will ask a kid, are you planning on going to college? Because he graduated from Burrs. But at Burrs, they would say, what college are you going to go to?
Sure.
So it was the difference, because the expectation there at Burrs were they were going to go into college. So, but I wanted to thank Dr. Mayor for what you're trying to accomplish.
Thank you. Thank you for your thoughts. Okay, we'll take a couple more comments, and then we'll wrap up the broadcast portion. Step on up here. I think we know who you are, but just in case, go ahead and tell everyone.
I'm Sue Arrington. I'm the state representative for Muncie. And in my role, I get around to all parts of the city and talk with people, often at their doorsteps. And I remember last year, there were 3 gentlemen from Whiteley who asked to speak with me, and we met at Panera. And they said, what we want to see Ball State do is hire people locally. And they gave an example of a gentleman who was an academic advisor who grew up in Muncie. He's now retired. And they said that, these young kids, when they would see somebody who grew up where they did, would be more likely to come and want to go to Ball State. And so at that point, they didn't think there were anybody in academic advising or on the faculty or the higher administration who was, looked like them and was local. And so I don't think any of those 3 gentlemen are here tonight, but when that topic came up of bringing someone, I thought, well, maybe I should just bring their message. And I would guess that there's some of that same feeling in the south part of Muncie, that we've been talking about relationships, and if they feel that there's somebody that grew up where they did, that's made it at Ball State, that may be more incentive for them to think of themselves as having that possibility too.
Okay, great. Appreciate those thoughts. And I appreciate everybody. I'm going to step away for just a moment. I'm going to step up here, and we're going to finish the broadcast while I move back up here. Maybe some quick closing remarks from any of you who might want to say something as it relates to our gathering tonight.
Why don't we start down at the other end? My goal here was to do more listening than talking, so Heather.
I'm thankful for the opportunity to be not only a member of Ball State staff, but also an active community member, and to be able to bridge that role between the needs of the community and the resources of the university. So I'm very thankful to the president for the Building Better Neighborhoods program, and I hope to act as a resource for the community across all levels. If you need help in your neighborhood, I'm here to provide those services.
I would just like to say thank you for the opportunity to be here again. It's extremely important from a personal perspective for me, not even thinking about being executive director of the Wiley Community Council, or you're supposed to do so many things. For me personally, it's extremely important to see people get on their feet and achieve more. And I just appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the things that Ball State is doing. I appreciate President Mearns. I'm telling you, there's been so much said already about his dedication to the community, and we've seen that in action already. He jumped in the pool with both feet. So I just appreciate that, and I want to see our community do great things, and I want to see people who didn't think they could do something, all of a sudden have hope and do the things that they thought they couldn't do.
I appreciate all of you being here. I want to give you an opportunity to say something, and then I have a closing remark, and that'll be all that we have time for tonight. So,
Well, again, I'll just, first of all, thank you, Greg. Thank you all for coming, and I want to thank my colleagues here very much. You know, we put them on the firing line, and they did it graciously and with open minds and open hearts, and I'm grateful for your participation today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
absolutely. And if you're watching us online, we are going to continue the conversation here for just a little bit longer, so stay tuned. We are going to end the program for the broadcast for WIPB. I want to say thank you to everyone for coming tonight. I also want to express my thanks to Muncie Community Schools. They provided this venue tonight at no cost, and we appreciate their willingness to do that to help move the conversation forward. I hope you will attend the other public forums. Our next one will be September 27th at 6 p.m. at Minnetrista, where we will discuss arts and culture. The third public forum will be at 6 p.m. on October 12th at Cornerstone Center for the Arts, and we will discuss economic development. If you don't feel like you had the opportunity to say what you wanted to say tonight, you can email it to me personally, and I will hand deliver it to the president himself. So I appreciate everyone being here tonight, and thank you for tuning in. Have a great night. In mind, but go ahead and give us your name and your thoughts. But I'm excited to hear what else we have to talk about. We'll go here for a little bit. I'm not going to go all night, certainly, but if you feel like you have something valuable you want to contribute to the conversation, then certainly move down, and we'd like to hear what you have to say.
Okay, so I would like to answer your questions about things that we can do in the communities, in the schools that I feel like Muncie really needs. So my name is Sadie Matchett. I am actually a Muncie Southside native. I was born and raised right here. I graduated from Muncie Southside in 2012, and I am actually a cohort in the schools within the context of community as a pre-service teacher. I'm noticing. I'm very privileged to be a part of that program, but what I want to mention is I think schools need more connection and somebody to come alongside, especially low-income students, and give them the supports they need and the information they need, and support to the teachers. Teachers need more support because they're trying to teach and support their students, and it can be too much. And teachers are getting burned out, and they're leaving the profession. So we need more support from hopefully Ball State and other community members to really come alongside these kids and uplift them and encourage them and let them know, like, you can do it. So yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Sadie.
Thank you. How many, come on up, how many Ball State students do we have here tonight? Okay.
All right.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate that.
Hi, my name is Mitch Isaacs. I'm in the not-for-profit world. I'm with the Schaefer Leadership Academy. And first, I just want to echo some other comments and say thank you all for serving on the panel tonight. I think this is an important step in deepening the relationship between Ball State and Muncie, and specifically to you, President Mearns, for coming here and being willing to listen and engage. So thank you for that. I wanted to ask or talk a little bit about the idea of more Ball State faculty and staff living in Muncie and Delaware County. That's something that's important to me. I'm a Ball State alum. I spent 10 years working on campus. My wife still works on campus. We have chosen to make Delaware County our home, and it's one of the best decisions we ever made. And so I'd just like to hear more from the panel in general and President Mearns specifically about thoughts or ideas about how we can get so many of these wonderful, qualified, educated, and I think passionate people to live in this community. So thank you.
So that's something that I've heard a lot about and have begun to do some thinking and talking to some of my colleagues. First of all, I think the data shows that approximately 75% of our faculty and staff live in Delaware County. Okay? Now, only about a little over 55% of the faculty do. So when we think about getting our faculty and staff to live, perhaps we need to think about initiatives that encourage more of our faculty to live here. But then beyond this, beyond Delaware County, we need to think more specifically about how do we get them to live, not to live where they work, which is in Muncie. Yeah. And so I don't know what the answers to that are, but I understand that that's an issue and that can be a virtuous cycle, right? Because they're living in the neighborhoods, they're developing relationship with their neighbors who don't necessarily have a direct connection with the university. So I've talked to, as I mentioned, I've talked to Dr. Bird about that because I think that same responsibility exists for the hospital as well. So again, and I know there's some work going on in terms of a Live Where You Work initiative. I know that there's some folks who are working on a report, but I'm interested to see what those suggestions are. But we've also begun having internal conversations about some creative and bold steps in that regard as well.
Okay, great. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Janae Sander, and I was actually going to speak to what that conversation was just about. I'm really happy to hear that this conversation is already happening in several ways. I moved to Muncie across the country 5 years ago. I'm faculty at Ball State, and we live in Muncie. My family lives here, and we didn't know a soul when we moved here. And we love living in Muncie, and it's a wonderful place to live. And I try to tell that to everybody I try to recruit to come work at Ball State. And one of the barriers, I have a successful relationship with a community partner, the Youth Opportunity Center, where I do my work. It's tied to my faculty line as part of my job. But it's really hard, especially for early career faculty, junior faculty. They have to worry about career advancement, and it's really hard. It takes so much more time to do immersive projects. It takes so much more time to build relationships, and having that tied to the tenure and promotion process would really, I think, help a lot where faculty spend their time. There's so many demands on our time. I'm almost never in my office. I'm usually out doing something else or meeting with students. And so having that tied to how faculty can be successful on community service committees, or not just university service committees. I know the university runs on service. That's how it all happens. But so does a community. And I think that that would be a great way to more overtly encourage faculty to live here in Muncie and to really give in the communities and be part of the communities here.
Thank you, Janae.
Great. I'm curious, I did ask how many Ball State students, how many Ball State employees? Okay, so now we see we have a lot of Ball State employees here. Actually, put all those hands back up for a second. How many of you live in Muncie? And I'm not trying to call out people, I'm just curious from a community relationship standpoint. Okay, good. Come on up.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Good evening. Thank you for this wonderful panel, and I am fully behind the Better Together campaign. I think it's great. My name is Tanya Seid, and I also work at Ball State University. I wanted to take the opportunity to share a thought and an idea that goes to the heart of what several panelists said about how important it is to build trust in the community. I would really love to see at Ball State something that encourages our active engagement with community, that would be along the lines of our wellness program, where we collect points for participating in wellness activities. What about collecting points for our volunteerism in the community? The United Way Day of Service and the very visible presence of Ball State people all over the community was a great step in the right direction. I'm not saying I need points, but I would love to see other people incentivized to truly participate in the community and start to build this true bridge so that we can get things done that are tangible, that are real, that are meaningful, and will make a difference in all of our lives.
That's great. Thank you. It's great. Yes.
So one of the things that I learned as we were trying to mobilize faculty and staff to participate in the United Way Day of Action is that we actually do have a paid leave policy that staff, if they're committed, if they're participating in a day of service like that, that actually is not, like they don't have to take a vacation day. But what we learned in the process was that very few of our employees and even their supervisors knew about that. So the first step is I think we have a good policy in place. We now need to do a better job of educating people so that they can take advantage of an incentive that already exists, and to expand on Tanya's idea.
We might be taking for granted that people know what the involvement was by Ball State on the United Way Day of Action. Can you just briefly tell us how involved the university was?
So I think when you count all of our faculty and staff, plus approximately 40 students from Indiana Academy, I think the total number was somewhere around 350 to 360. The year before we had about 60.
That's
and
great.
This year we had about 360.
That's great.
And the challenge for us, just going back to the common theme, is we're going to have more than 400 next year, right? This is not just one and done. We're going to come back next year as well.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm Doug Marshall. I'm the city councilman over here on the south side of town. And I keep hearing, we want stuff on the south side. Would Ball State entertain something to maybe put some kind of learning center? It seems like everything's all over there. I think if maybe they put some type of learning center or something on the south end of town, you know, that would help the people over here to get more involved with Ball State. I mean, that's one of the ideas I've always thought. You know, everything's always over there. Could we maybe build something over here?
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, I got one more that popped up. One, all right, come on. All right, step on up here. That's okay. Okay.
So I am from Muncie, graduated from Muncie Central and attended Ball State, where I received 2 degrees. And I've really enjoyed the conversation that's happened tonight. But I would like to remind all of you and everyone in the crowd that not everyone who attends Ball State leaves. I love my city. I've planted my roots here, my husband too. A lot of my peers, I know some of them are in the audience now, we are here and we are making a difference. We're running your nonprofits, we're in your banks, we're in your businesses, we're in your stores. And I think that's something important to remember when we're having these conversations is that let's celebrate those who have their roots here and are from here and have stayed to make it better.
Great. Absolutely. So come on up. One more survey. That's okay, I'll stall. One more question. How many are Ball State graduates? There we go. All right, step over here for me.
Marilyn Carey.
All right, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you all very, very much. I'm so impressed. I'm just a little bit disappointed with the audience that there aren't more of you here, but then what's here? Thank you for being here. And now go out and spread the word about this community and how wonderful it is, because we're not getting the word out. This Muncie Community Schools is a great school system. And do we hear it? Do we hear it? Every day it's some bad news that comes. Unfortunately, the hurricane and all the terrible things that have happened down south have been on the headlines, and so we're not on the headlines right now. So, but tell your teachers that they are doing a good job. That's right. For heaven's sake. The morale is terrible. It's terrible. And why did we lose so many kids? Because the word didn't get out about what wonderful things we're doing in our school system. We are doing great things, and it's not getting out. So, right?
There it is. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right.
He's heard me before.
I have heard you before. That is true. Everybody who's ever heard her before. And that's okay.
I just have one request. Could you come out of your shell a little bit?
I know all of you, almost all of you, not some, a couple of you I've not met personally, but here they are saying such good things about what can be done, and now let's go do it. Let's go do it.
I agree.
Right, Ms. Carey.
And with that, I think that we will close tonight. Any other remarks or?
No, again, thank you for sending us out on the right positive note, because we're better together.
I agree. And we encourage everybody to attend the second and the third town halls, and we hope that we see you there. And as I said earlier, we encourage you to bring someone with you. So have a great night. Have a safe travel home. Thank you for coming.
Sit next to you. Oh, no, this is my pleasure, my privilege.
Okay.